I'm Legend, I play this game professionally, so I can probably hit rank 1. Alright, so for this game, we are against a Paladin, and the cards that I'm choosing to keep here are just going to be the Thornveil Tentacle. I thought about Symphony of Sins for a second, but realized that it would be too slow, because Paladin is going to be very aggressive. I want to find a 1-drop, a 2-drop, a 3-drop, and I found it. So we're gonna drop the 1-drop right away, and we get Wind Fury, which is, in theory, really good in some decks, but in this one, because you're a little bit more control, it's not as important. And on this turn, I'm a little bit confused on what I want to do. I could, in theory, play the Spark Bot and just hit them in the face and make them trade into me, or I can just kill off the 2-1, and because Paladin does have ways of pumping things up, like Hand of a Doll or whatever, I decided to just kill the minion before anything bad could happen. Then they play Boogie down to get 2 2-1s out there, and I think Cultist is just the best tempo play. Like, yes, in theory, I could play the 2-drop and the 1-drop, but getting a 3-4 out there is definitely better, in my opinion, and it gets a curse into their hand, which could disrupt them a little bit. There's a slight chance they choose to play it instead of something else, but obviously they don't end up doing that. Now, they think about going face here for a while, but I think they end up trading in, which makes me a little bit disappointed, because I knew I was going to be able to kill the 5-1 relatively easily, and having my 3-4 stay alive would have been nice. We kill up the 1-1 with my Tentacle. This Tentacle is actually way better than I thought it was going to be, because if you play it on curve, like on turn 2, they usually only have 1 minion anyway. It's a nice little bit of lifesteal. Anyway, this turn I'm just gonna life tap, play the Tour Guide to make my next life tap on turn 6 free, just in case, and then kill the 1-1 with the Drain Soul, because I don't want them to be able to pump it up with their weapon right away and do some extra damage to me just for free, right? So at this point, they've played multiple minions, and I'm hoping that they don't hit with their weapon here. If they don't hit with their weapon here, I could wipe everything with Abyssal Wave, but they do, and it goes on the 4-4, which is the worst target for me. But luckily, I have 2 Abyssal Waves, so as long as nothing too crazy happens in the next couple of turns, I can kill this off with another Abyssal Wave, or the Mortal Eradication, maybe if I top deck Dragged Below. Then they get Horn of the Windlord, which is devastating, because that, like, look at me, I'm at 14 HP. If they have, like, 1 damage spell to give themselves attack, I lose. Now, at this point, I was told that I probably should have played Reverberations on the taunt minion, and in my head, I didn't think I should, because a lot of decks have, like, you know, small little pings, like Mage, Shaman, Warlock. A lot of decks have a way of doing 1 damage, but I realized after playing this game that Paladin doesn't really have that. He would have had to hit it with his face, or specifically had, like, the Leviathan, and then that would have been enough to kill my taunt and continue to go face. But if he played the Leviathan, he couldn't pump up his weapon. So I should have Reverberation to the 8-4 taunt first. Just throwing that out there. Their turn 7 takes a long time, and in the end, they just play a curse, play Liadrin with a couple of small minions, and I realized that, like, that was a super duper weak play. That was so weak. All I need to do now is hit them in the face, right, with my 1-3, play Defile because it fully wipes everything, and then play Zakul. Zakul will heal me up a little bit, and it'll force him to hit my 6-5 with his weapon instead of going face. So at the end of the day, it's going to heal me for 4, it's going to essentially deal 3 damage to him and save me from taking 3 damage, and we're chilling. But then something very interesting happens, which makes me think that I'm going to die. They don't swing with their weapon here. Wait, they don't swing with their weapon here. It was a little bit of a delayed thing, which is actually a big misplay. I end up taking the Divine Shield to pump my minion up a little bit, and then I will trade my 6-5 into their 4-6, and then Dragged Below and trade into another one of the minions. Now, this is a really interesting situation because they could have just killed my 6-5. And the fact that they didn't do that made me think, also, this was a bad trade, by the way. I should have traded the 2-3 into whatever minion got left up. I end up life tapping at the end of my turn and killing off the 5-5 to get rid of the taunt minion. But what that told me was that, okay, he is trying to set up lethal next turn. He's got to have some sort of damage spell, and he's just got to, like, hope that my 6-5, or I don't have another curse minion, so that way he can go face with a ton of damage. And he did have an extra damage spell. It wasn't enough to kill me in the first place, and then he ends up hitting my 3-3 with his weapon, so he ended up losing even more damage than originally. And then I'm 1 damage off lethal here. You see me freaking out a little bit. A little bit disappointed, but it's fine. We don't end up playing Reverberations, because if I did, he'd be able to just trade into both my minions and kill them off really, really easily, and I can use Reverberations on something better, like the Leviathan. Absolutely perfect that that ended up being the minion that he ended up playing. If it had been the Countess, that would have been way, way, way worse, but the Leviathan is pretty nice for me, because the Leviathan will spawn with the part, and the part won't have the Reverberation debuff. So I'm able to hit into it, and yes, it does still technically immediately die to the 2-1, but it's still nice. We take Sargeras because I really, really like him. I think that he's a great card, and if he ends up playing a big board of legendary minions, I'm gonna need to kill his stuff off. And at this point, I'm deciding between burning his cards or drawing cards myself. He only has 8 cards left, so burning cards could be really, really good. But I decide to take the draw cards because if I draw enough curses, I can theoretically just kill him next turn. I play the tour guide, but don't life tap because I think every point of HP could be relevant. It's just to be safe, right? And also I play the 1-1 so that way I can trade into the 2-1. Then they play Prosecutor Malatrix or whatever, however you pronounce her name, I don't know, which absolutely devastates me because I could have won the game that turn with the curses. Luckily for me, I'm still able to play Sargeras and wipe the board and get some minions, but it does give them one more turn that they could be able to win. Like if they end up generating Alakir, and then they have another for Kel'Thas, or Kel'Thalos, and then they have like another charge minion like King Crush, there's a world where I could possibly lose the game next turn. So I'm a little worried. Obviously, a lot of things have to go right for that to happen. They don't get all of the right things and we win. But yeah, overall, I think that they misplayed a little bit with their Horn of the Windlord, and then I misplayed a little bit by not using my first Reverberations on the top minion to protect myself, but overall, a pretty decent game. So up next, we are against a rogue, and because I think it's going to be some sort of aggro rogue, I get rid of everything looking for early game cards. I probably could have kept Defile, but the thing about Defile into rogue is they're only gonna have like 1 or 2 big mech minions. Defile isn't really good. It's better against wide boards of smaller minions, and as it turns out, they are going mech rogue, so my suspicions were confirmed. We immediately draw a card, and I was thinking maybe I coin out the chaotic consumption, but I decide not to because I think I can get more value out of it next turn after they use a magnetic card. So that way I can kill 2 cards with 1 card, even though I take a little bit of extra damage. This turn they end up playing their 2/5, their legendary card, along with a little mech minion, which is a problem, and I'm trying to figure out if there's a way I could wipe the board. And I'm thinking if I play the 2-mana plant and it hits the 2/5, I can, in theory, kill it off with Defile because I have my 1 HP tour guide, then it goes 1, 2, 3. The thing is, though, I decided to just kill it off guaranteed and then use my Tentacle to kill off the 1/2 because even though it uses a really good removal card in the Chaotic Consumption, I think it's better to guaranteed remove it than potentially miss and then just lose the game. Then he forges a card. We know that that's the Duplicator card, so every time he plays a minion, I have to kill it. Which means that even though the Mortal Eradication isn't the greatest value here and it's only going to do 2 damage, I have to kill that minion or they're going to get a ton of extra stuff. And this goes for basically every turn after this. They play a minion, I'm going to have to do everything I can to kill those minions and make sure that they can't get the magnetic. So my 2/2 will trade into their 2/3. Then I play a Defile, it'll do 1 damage to the 2/1. Then it'll kill the Divine Shield minion. I almost counted wrong there with the Defile and hit the Divine Shield first, but that would have been wrong. But we wipe the board, play a 3/4 to get some pressure on the board, and we're fine. Then they top deck Krakatoa, which is so miserable because I'm like, literally nothing in their deck could win them the game at this point. The game is 100% over. Unless they draw Krakatoa, and then they drew Krakatoa because it's a minion that I can't kill with Abyssal Wave right away. So in theory, they are doing like 14 damage to me with this Krakatoa play, which is not good. He plays a stealth minion, and I know that he wants to pump it up, so I need to kill it as fast as possible. So I end up playing that. I get 2 Abyssal Waves, give him more curses, and kill off his board so he can't play the magnetic on, he can't magnetic the stealth minion and do a bunch of damage. Then he plays a Lab Constructor, and I have another Abyssal Wave. I'm pretty sure I would have been fine with just Zakul because of the healing. I could have gone Zakul and used Reverberations because apparently the ability would then activate twice, once for each Zakul, and I would heal the full, but we win the game either way. And next up, we are against a Demon Hunter. Now, Demon Hunter can be one of two things. There's an Outcast aggro Demon Hunter that is seeing a lot of play recently because it's actually quite strong, or Relic Demon Hunter, which is a little outdated and I think Curse Warlock does well against. We still mulligan for good tempo because if it does end up being aggressive, we need all the plays early that we can get, like the Thornveil Tentacle and the Drone Deconstructor. But if it ends up being Relic Demon Hunter, it's not great, but at least I have things that I can play on the board to apply some pressure. And since they don't play anything turn 1, I'm thinking, okay, probably Outcast or probably Relic, but they could have just like not had a 1-drop. Then they Forge and I'm like, okay, it could be Outcast because they could be running the Demon Hunter Forge card that basically draws cards until you have as many as your opponent, but I don't think that that's the case. So in the end, because I don't think it's going to be aggro, I play the Tentacle, just so I have an extra minion on the board to apply pressure. And the reason why I don't think that it's aggro at this point is because if you Forge that card, like there's no world where a super aggressive deck like that would do nothing turn 1 and then choose to Forge turn 2. Like they would have played something, right? Forging is later on. You do that for 5 mana to refill your hand. You Forge and play it. I play my 3/4 just because it's tempo. Then I see what Forge card they got. And it is the Mechanome Guide, which is in a different version of Relic Demon Hunter than I am familiar with. It runs the Forge guy. I forgot his name exactly in the heat of the moment, but the guy that gives you a weapon. And it just gives you an extra win condition because if the relics aren't enough to win, or some of them get burned, or you don't draw them, if you get a big weapon, it can be enough to still win you the game. They play Astlore and kill off my minion, which is a little bit of a disappointment, but it's fine. We kill it off with our Tentacle and we just pass. We're playing fairly slow right now. Our hand is fairly expensive, but not the biggest deal in the world. And then at this point, they hit my 2/2, and I'm like, okay, I have a vision here. I have Reverberation, and I have Drathier, and they have 18 HP. There is a world where if they can't kill Drathier, Reverberations will get me lethal, even if they get a little bit of lifesteal. So I play Drathier to threaten the 2-turn lethal. They don't necessarily know that I have Reverberations and I'm going to win the game next turn. But in my head, I'm thinking as long as they don't kill Drathier, the game should be over. Unless they have like a ton of lifesteal. But after playing a 4-mana card and only having 3 mana left, I feel pretty confident. Then they play I-Beam and I'm like, okay, if you have another I-Beam randomly, we're in trouble. But they don't have another I-Beam. We hit them in the face, we play Reverberations, and then we have more than enough damage. So this is the first stream where I actually dropped in ranks. I went from 320 to 402, and overall, I would not recommend Curse Warlock. The reason is because even though it's really good against board-based matchups like Hunter, like Rogue and Paladin, it is just so weak against Sith Mage and Nature Shaman, which are OTKs, and it's so weak against control decks because of their disruption and healing that it just doesn't feel like it's strong enough in the current meta. If Mage and Shaman get nerfed a little bit, I think that this deck could actually become very strong, but as of right now, I would stay away from it.